Hi everybody, this is Dee at Aloha Astro, and you can find me online at alohaastro.com. I am a personal astrologer and I'm available for consultations. Let's take a look today at what is going on June 14th, 2019, and it is Donald Trump's birthday. And I wanted to take a look at his transits to his chart as well as his solar return chart. So we have them both side by side. One of the first things that popped up for me initially is that on the solar return chart, which is actually a picture of the transits today, and the chart is constructed based on where he is at his birthday. According to the official White House schedule, he actually is in Washington, D.C., according to that schedule. So we use the location of Washington, D.C. to construct the chart and determine the rising sign or the ascendant. And the first thing that I noticed was that we have a moon opposing Uranus, and we also have the same aspect that occurs in his own natal chart. Different signs, but still there's a similarity here with those two aspects. So I feel that that's going to be a dominant theme for him this year, and that this is going to have a strong effect on his marital life, first of all. Because it does involve an opposition between the first and the seventh house in the solar return. But if we look at the connection or the resonance and harmony with that same aspect in his natal chart, that's between the fourth house and the 10th house. And there may be some uncertainty as to whether either the public decides he's not going to remain where he is anymore, or whether some other determining factor comes into play, especially legal. And we also find that he holds a lot of power this year, or may fight very hard to remain where he is, and he may actually have a lot of energy behind him for that with this grand trine and kite. But the opposition that bisects the grand trine and kite involves Pluto and Saturn and the South Node. And the Pluto and Saturn in Capricorn in that 10th house of career are both retrograde. And the opposition here to Mercury, Mars, and the North Node in Cancer in the 4th house of home, I have the feeling there's still going to, if he continues to be president after the next election, that there would still be investigations and there would still be a great deal of discord. I feel that there may be something very destined or meant to be about all of this in terms of how it affects the future of the country and how our government might shift and change after his presidency. That basically the country as a whole and the government may decide to do things differently, and that there may be a lot of lessons involved in having this person as the leader of our country. So there's a lot of strength in here that shows that he may continue in his position and may actually continue as president for another term. However, there's a great deal of opposition and conflict. And I have the feeling that if he were to be ousted in any way, it may be more to do with him stepping up and saying, I no longer want to do this job, and claiming health reasons and putting family and health first and stepping down. That there seems to be some protection here with the sun in the third and the quincunx here to Saturn and Pluto, that he will continue to and involved with this T-square of Jupiter, Neptune, and the sun between the 9th and the 12th and the 3rd, he will continue to hide things or withhold things, and basically I would say get away with it. The getting away with things is in his chart naturally. And whether we like this person or we don't like this person, he actually does have a rather elevated chart. The majority of his planets are up here in the final quadrant of the chart in houses 10, 11, and 12. I have the feeling that he will continue to be known in history, but mostly as being an example of power gone wrong and somebody who had some extreme narcissism and tyranny, and that, however, if he did not have this position in society, then perhaps actions would never have been taken that create change. And through him being there, I don't think he's necessarily the one making the changes himself that are better to make anything great again, or whatever the slogan is. I think that it is simply by him creating a lot of upheaval and uh, going after the things that he wants personally, because everything in here really is like more money for him and having more, getting more, being more. It's very personal. Jupiter and Neptune and Chiron in Libra in the second house, uh, making this sextile to Pluto in the 12th. He does desire a lot of power and he wants other people to see him as a powerful being, and the trine that they make to Uranus North Node and Sun in the 10th house, he very much wants to be seen and noticed as being unique and individual. And it's really like, what can you give me financially? What can I get out of this? And it's a game. It's a game. It's amusing and entertaining, and he wants very much to be liked. And the thing is, he really doesn't care who's liking him, and it isn't necessarily that he reciprocates. He's willing to pay in terms of, or get bad attention. Any attention is better than no attention, as the squares here to Mercury and the Saturn Venus conjunction in the 11th indicate. Um, I believe it's Liz Green, the astrologer Liz Green, who says that Venus and Saturn aspects are prostitute aspects, that basically the idea of love and affection, along with Saturn, which is work and very dutiful and realistic, when you put these two planets together, there is no unconditional love. There's the idea of working and love, or working at love, or that you have to buy love in some way or earn it, that it just doesn't come conditionally. And this 11th house of friends, groups, organizations, um, even the bigger picture of the government, all these planets here are in harsh aspect to his second house planets, which is his personal money and finances, self-worth and self-esteem. It's what he can get out of his position. It's not about doing anything better for anybody, but what he's going to gain and get out of it. Um, so the lying comes from Mercury making a square to Neptune and to Jupiter, and he basically will say whatever he wants to say to somebody else, and the attitude that he can do anything and get away with it, he communicates it very clearly and has said as much. And the trine here between these planets in the second, and Uranus and the Sun up in the 10th in Gemini, he can get away with it. And some people seem to enjoy that very much, or they support that in him. And maybe they would like to be that and like to have that quality. So overall, I think that he has a good chance to be reelected. And I don't have other charts in front of me to look at who, you know, who else is in the game. I don't get that heavily into politics as an astrologer in general. I'm simply looking at the chart of a person who is meant to have a rather big impact on the world at large, because the 10th, 11th, and 12th houses are where there's a connection with larger groups of people and where the effect of the person can continue on after they have passed, after they're gone, as evidenced by planets in the 12th house. And his own emotional qualities, his mental state, I would say there is some imbalance in this person because of the moon in mutable Sagittarius, making the opposition to the sun, and Uranus in Gemini, also mutable. We do have a T square going on right now involving mutable signs and pulling on basically his own sun and his Jupiter. And the Neptune quality there in the rest of the T square, it sits in his seventh house of one-on-one relationships. Um, I don't know how things are going to go at this point because uh, the Neptune energy there is kind of like a floppy fish, and it's very indecisive, and it's involved with mutable energy of Jupiter, which is growth oriented, and the sun. Will the public choose him or not? That's the question. And I don't know. It's undecided at this point with all that mutable energy. He definitely would be very much in the public eye over the next month while we have a lot moving through his 10th and 11th house. Um, he may be coming on very strong with certain things that I would say, he has money tied into it, that he's going to get money out of it, that it's not about policy for the people or what's good for the people. It's how is this going to put some more money into his bank account. But he may push very hard for things because of Mars joining Saturn and Venus and Mercury transiting through the 11th. So there may be a big push then during the Mercury retrograde in July. I think that there may be some things that come to light about him that maybe the public is not aware of, and there may be further investigation into his activities. I think things go a bit quiet for him in August, and then in September, we can see another resurgence of energy as his first house becomes active. I find it interesting that in the solar return chart, we have the Virgo energy intersected in the sixth house, and we have the Pisces energy and Neptune. Basically, the Neptune that's moving through his seventh house in the natal is in the 12th house in the solar return, and it's intercepted as well. And those intersected signs in the 6th and the 12th, Neptune and Chiron here, this is where I think if he withdraws or if he's pushed out or whatever, if you're sitting around waiting for him to go to jail, I don't think so. I think that this is a protective influence here, and that the get out of jail free card is probably health. As the main issue. And I think that as we see Saturn make a move into his sixth house, which will be December 29th of 2020, he will begin a transit through his sixth house of health, which please don't go running and looking at your charts thinking, oh, my health will be poor. Based on his age and his general health now, I would say that he is at higher risk for decline and not doing well. And when Saturn passes over a critical angle in a chart, and it can be any of the four darker lines that you see here, these are critical angles at these cusps of houses. When Saturn hits there on March 8th of 2023, that may be a critical time for him health-wise, especially since it will be making an opposition to his Mars on the ascendant. And would he pass at that time? I don't look for death within people's charts. I just can say that that would be a critical opposition. And these are both very physical planets. Mars and Saturn are very physical. And after that 3-year stretch moving through his, or actually closer to 2, years, yeah, 2 year stretch moving through that sixth house, he may be quite debilitated. Um, so I think that it would be health as the reason why he backs out or declines. And if he is reelected, then I would say after a 2 year stretch, he may decide he doesn't like the work or the job anymore, or that he is too tired, or he has health issues and he cannot do the job anymore. As it's moving through the sixth house, it will be touching off opposition to his Pluto first, and there may be a major crisis, such as, heart attack. He is at risk for, from what I can see on the physical level, the heart circulatory system because of Mars in Leo. And then Saturn can indicate things that are long term or chronic, and can have an effect on digestive system, stomach, um, with Saturn in Cancer. And it also rules the womb or breast tissue for women, but for a male, this would be the stomach. So there can be long-term or chronic things that develop as a result. So I would say that his major issue here is health, and he may actually be found to be mentally unfit to be president of the United States. I don't think that other things could come in on the um, legal level that would find him to be out. I think that we have a dark horse sitting here, or unpredictable energy, with Uranus moving through the ninth, and Neptune not too far from going into the eighth. I think that he would get the get out of jail free card and get some pardoning or whatever in the long term. I do not think that he would wind up being seen as a criminal in the immediate moment. I think that for the long term, though, historically, he probably will be. I don't think that he would be honored or revered. He would be set as an example of, when power is misused, or when society does not have proper things in place to be able to help to choose politicians who represent society, that he's a good example of something that has gone wrong in the system itself. And if that is part of what his sole purpose is, which is to bring some changes through his career or his work, through basically being an unstable or erratic individual and going after the money, then we have to look seriously at why we allow somebody in a position where the whole goal for them is themselves and going after the money. So he may be actually fulfilling his sole purpose at this point, and in the long run, it becomes better for the structure of the government. But in the meantime, there can be, because of his own desires and his own agenda for his own money, that society suffers with Mercury, Saturn, and Venus in Cancer in that 11th house, squaring his second house planets. So society as a whole may suffer, but as a result of him being in the position that he's doing the work of his chart and his sole purpose, and he is meant to be a prominent person in this life, despite being a deceiver, and despite being highly erratic and unstable. Um, so that's it, and we shall have to see how history decides things and how the public and society decides things. But we have a very mixed chart in his solar return, where things could change on a dime. If anything, I would say that it's going to be the health issue is what comes up, and the claims of, I I have to be free from this. I have to be left alone. My health is not good. I'm backing out. I'm done, or whatever. I don't think that he's going to be ousted. And if he is reelected, then I have the feeling that the same thing, that the health situation may become real enough that that's the way he is removed, that he is noticeably unfit and certifiable in some way, like dementia or whatever, or he actually does suffer something like a heart attack during the next 2 years. So, okay, everybody, thank you for listening. And you can find me at alohaastro.com and also follow me on all of the social media links here that are on my site.